Be more grind, rise, shine through the struggle. Black dollar circulate, flexing muscle. Politics and biz building walls like pipes. Motown soul rap mixed in the fix. Tiny cover spitting truth, microphone holder. Past the noise scene, watch growth in the folder. Black biz bright spotlight in the dark. Hustling hard, lighting sparks in the park. Beam on news, where we breaking glass ceilings. All black everything, income healing. Donnie Glover, flip the script, let's go. Black Wall Street roadmap, be more flow. Real talk, stock rise, dreams ain't looking hollow. Blueprints, handshakes, enemies wallow. Baltimore kings, queens, crown on the throne. Legacy built, stone by stone. Headlines, deadlines, moves in the background. Politics, money clips, elevate the town. Black beard strategist, wealth can't be missed. Twist the plot, make the whole world twist. Be more news, success we inhaling. Victories, IRS, no detailing. Donnie Glover, rise to shine, let's glow. Focused on green, black Wall Street in tow.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. Are we Moors, Hebrew Israelites, Native Americans? Tavis, Indigenous Education. Welcome back.
Oh man, good to have you. Good to have you. And well, as a matter of fact, thank you for having me. Let me say it correctly. Thank you for having me.
Why you smiling, man? You like the video?
Oh man, I love the intro, man. You're gonna make me step my channel up some. I love it. I love it. Keep bringing it. Keep bringing it. It's a great question.
Had a very interesting conversation today. I want people to know that I do, as a journalist, research. It's not like I come on here and I haven't read anything, haven't looked up anything, haven't asked questions, haven't dug. I talked with a friend of mine today who works at the Smithsonian.
Which one?
DC.
Well, which museum, rather?
Both of them.
At the African American History Museum?
No, the main one.
Okay. Okay, at the Smithsonian.
The Smithsonian.
Okay.
Many of the people who listen to this show know that the Smithsonian. So I'm going to do my best as a journalist to share what I think I know, what I know, and I have no problem distinguishing it. What I think I know, and I say that because when it comes to researching North America, when it comes to researching anything that happened here,
gotta be in it.
It's as if the things we are looking for, the things that we know are out there, are well hidden. Some are right in plain sight. One thing that's in plain sight is the work of this guy, and I'm ready for him tonight. Let me tell you, I wasn't ready the last time. I'm ready tonight. I got you tonight, baby. So this guy, Walter Plecker, this is the letter by Walter Plecker.
Okay, Walter Plecker.
If you want somebody to be mad at when it comes to our community and what happened to tens of thousands of melanated people and their lineage, their history, their land, it was taken. And as has been brought out on this show by Mike Lane, the paper genocide of tens of thousands of Black people alone in Virginia, it's mind-blowing when you look at when you calculate how much land, how much that's all worth. It will blow your mind. But this one piece that I have to share, and it's the letter from Walter Plecker to local registrars. Now, he was in charge of counting people, the census, what have you, down in Richmond. In a letter dated 1943, he wrote to local registrars, clerks, legislators, and others responsible for and interested in the prevention of racial intermixture. In our January 1943 annual letter to local registrars, and clerks of courts with list of mixed surnames, we called attention to the greatly increased effort and arrogant demands now being made for classification as whites, or at least for recognition as Indians, as a preliminary step to admission into the white race by marriage of groups of the descendants of the free Negroes so designated before 1865 to distinguish them from slaves. According to Mendel's law of heredity, 1 out of 4 of a family of mixed breeds through the introduction of illegitimate white blood is now so near white. Listen to this man. Is now so near white in appearance as to lead him to proclaim himself as such and to demand admission into white schools forbidden by the state constitution. The other 3 find it more difficult to make the grade. What grade? As a climax of their ambition, colored people of this type are applying for licenses to marry whites or for white licenses when intermarrying amongst themselves. These they frequently secure with ease when they apply in a county or city, not the home of the woman, and are met by a clerk or deputy who justifies himself in accepting a casual affidavit as the truth and in issuing a license to any applicant, regardless of the requirement of section 5099A, paragraph 4 of the code. It's not that much longer, folks. Just bear with me. This section places the proof upon the applicants, not upon the clerks. We have learned that affidavits cannot always be accepted as truth. This loose practice, to state it mildly, of a few clerks is now the greatest obstacle in the way of the proper registration by race required of the state registrar of vital statistics in that section. Local registrars who are supposed to know the people of their registration areas, of course, have no excuse for not catching false registration of births and deaths. I guess it's in many cases, Negroids have white marriage certificates while the Bureau demands correctly legal registration as to race when their children's births are reported. Armed with the clerk's marriage certificate, they leave home and easily pass as white when the birth certificate with the pedigree on the back is not required. They're even threatening legal action against the state registrar, but have difficulty in securing a lawyer if he first applies to the Bureau of Vital Statistics for the facts. Last part, the Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics, through the exceptional, painstaking, and laborious work of the high-trained genealogists whom it is fortunate in having, sounds like a bucket of crap to me, has made a study by groups and families of the principal borderline aspirants for racial change. The chief sources of information are the early birth and death records made by tax assessors from 1853 to 1896, marriage records from 1853 to date, U.S. Census reports from 1830, 1850, 1870, especially a printed list of Negroes by counties from the 1830 census, county taxpayer lists by races, now in the state library, which have been studies back to 1808 and not of value, their own proclamation of race made by applicants for registration of voters, made soon after the war between the states to the United States military authorities, now preserved in the state library. The progenitors of the present would-be whites then marched up voluntarily and registered for the first time in the life of their race in Virginia as Negro voters, not as Indians, not as whites. Do you hear the chicanery that went on there?
Well, you know what? I want to say thank you to my mama for keeping me up to speed with things so that I can just jump right in here and still be able to follow you and know who this man is and what he did. But I would, interesting enough, I would just like to say thank you. Yes, I was having a conversation about doing a show with you, and I was talking to them about, you having this conversation over the last few weeks, and that I appreciate the discussion because you are a journalist, and so it's coming, you offer that space in a balanced way. So I definitely appreciate that. But I would like to just say, I wouldn't say that he was the the person to blame. He just used the laws, and he just used what had already been laid down before him and instituted that in a way that protected the so-called white race, but obviously not as white as they wanted it to be.
There was something else I came across, which is surnames. They
Yeah,
assigned surnames because we have to
because we
wonder.
didn't.
Did you ever wonder where you got Sanders from? I certainly wondered who in the hell, how did I get named Glover? How that happened. And to Mike Lane's credit, he pointed out the paper Genocide, again, of tens of thousands of Black people in Richmond who were
Well,
declassified. Their
mhm.
indigenous ancestry was eliminated and they were labeled as purely African American. And that's a part of the beef that a lot of people have with the history.
Well, yeah, but that was just the last one that people are aware of. It wasn't the first, and it was just one that's very prevalent and very easily tracked with the paperwork today. But again, um, he said it. He said it in that. He said it in there. If these people were labeled as free, free color folk to distinguish themselves from slaves, one would have to ask you, well, where did all these free color folk come from? And so the paper genocide didn't just start with the remnants of those that was left allowed to be classified as Indian and or had been had been mixed to the point where they were allowed to be white, or they were perceived to be white and acted white in the community, and then therefore was allowed to be identified as white. Remember, different laws in different states, different territories, different counties had different laws. And so in some counties, if you looked white, if you act white, and if you fraternized with the white people, if you dressed white, even if you was an Indian, you was allowed to be white. And so here he was really cleaning up, or well, he thought he was getting rid of the Indian problem that was left over. But again, it didn't start with him, because if he himself acknowledges that there were a distinct group of people called free colored people that were separated and distinct from the slaves, who were those free colored people? And if those free colored people were here prior to colonization, then again, now there's another form of genocidal genocide occurring through the documentations and through misidentification, misclassification.
This is
The
another
Perceived
piece.
Racial Integrity Act. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this
We
is
can
the
talk about it.
one drop of Black
Mhm.
blood. And I'd love to know what your mom's thinks of this, but we all heard of the one drop rule. That's what this was. The one
Mhm.
drop rule. One drop of blood, black blood, and you're Black.
Tainted
What
the
we didn't
stream.
realize.
It made it. The court document says one drop of uh, black blood taints the stream and makes it African in descent. That's the court
So
ruling. So
so
if
people who
anybody
had it,
had any slaves, then you're African.
so they
My
took
bad.
their ancestry and consequently any rights they may have had to the land, correct?
That's it.
All
That's
this
it.
time
But you
we
have
thought the one drop rule was, yeah, I'm Black. No, it's saying, yeah, I'm Black, I'm not Indian, and consequently I have no inheritance. That's
yes,
what a lot of the young people are mad about.
yes. Yep.
I gotta say this though. One of the comments on this show was that from a young lady in Oklahoma, she says, "Stand the F up." She feels like her ancestors didn't stand up. She felt like her ancestors didn't fight. And I talked to an elder today, and he told me to share with her some of the history that she may not know of how Black people fought, whether it was the Black
That,
Panthers, whether it was Denmark VC in South Carolina, who was so threatening that they had to build the citadel there in South Carolina. They built a fort for this one man, Denmark VC. Maybe she doesn't know maybe about Nat Turner. Maybe she doesn't know about the various people who fought not even on land, who were fighting in the Atlantic Ocean. When we see stories of pirates, we never think of us in that movie because Hollywood made these movies. We never think that we were somehow in that picture in any other way except in a slave ship. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the truth. Black people have always been leaders.
yeah, but we also have to recognize that we were a part of this problem too. You know, if we were on the ships, then we were part of the problem because some of us, you know, allowed the things, allowed material wealth to, you know, usurp, you know, morals and ethics and values. And, you know, but I would like to say with respects to, you know, the fight and being able to stand up, you know, in the South, they fought and, you know, for hundreds of years. And a lot of the ways that the South was begotten, you know, wasn't through war, but through paperwork again. Like for one instance, this thing called the Yazoo land scandal, where Georgia basically took, you know what I mean, half of the Creek territory. You know, the thing is that the colonizing a system itself figured out because they couldn't beat them in war. You got to think about it. It was here since 1492. It wasn't until 1610 that the first colony was established. What was happening there? But then you got to think about it. It wasn't until what? When was Jamestown? Late, right? And so, you know, what was happening here throughout all of that time? It was a lot of warring happening. And when you research the history of that space down there, you recognize how they received the land and how they basically won the wars was through through marriage, intermingling.
1607 was Jamestown.
1607 was Jamestown, and Jamestown burnt down in 1650. That's really when the race started, and we'll get back to that in a minute. But before 1650, to get to the woman's point, if you look at the history of what was happening in the South, and then how they eventually took over, what was happening was that they couldn't win in war. So what they did was they intermarried because they realized that the land and that the authority was being transferred through the women. And so they made it. So if you look in Jamestown and you look at what was happening with John Smith, you'll see in his logs that they talk about making it illegal for the local people to intermarry. However, their main job was to marry into the queen's family because the land and the authority is transferred through the woman, and so through the so-called queen, not the so-called chief. And
How
so
long
what
have
they
you
did
been-
was,
I'm sorry.
now just to finish up, so what they did was they married into the women. They took women like Pocahontas, had children with them, raised the children to be more European thinking than native thinking, and then through the authority of that child would create fake treaties, fake deeds, fake land transfers, And so the majority of the treaties and land transfers, particularly in the South, but the majority of the East Coast, generally speaking, were fraudulent. Like there was no such thing as a Penn Treaty with William Penn. He never signed a treaty with the Lenape people to get Philadelphia at all. Yet every year they celebrate Penn Treaty. They made it up. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that up and down the East Coast.
So I'm going to put a plug in for your website. Tell us how you and your mom got started.
Yeah, so I guess to bring it a little to be a little fun with it, I mean, when I was raised in a different culture in the community, they put me right in the public school when I was in 5th grade. I really didn't read or write English too well, and I was a foreigner to them. And so one day when I'm walking home with my father, I'm like, "Hey, yo, like I'm black, just like why they keep telling me I ain't black." And he explains to me, you're not black, son, you're Native American. We got caught up in the the system, the law, the colony took away our identity. We had to be black. And so that's what you do. Take it forward, to 1999. I had my daughter reading books. I ran into the the rights of indigenous peoples. It was a draft declaration at the time, which is a document written up by 30 different indigenous women from around the world and then taken into the United Nations and was fought to be put they fought for a draft to be put on law and to be voted on for 30 years. In 1992, they finally got a draft placed on docket. So from 1992 to 2007, that draft was on docket. In 2007. That draft was ratified by a bunch of countries. In 2013, the United States did ratify it under Obama. And so while it was still a draft, I recognized the ability that my family had, recognizing our lost identity and being able to trace multiple sides of my family tree back to the 1500s. I figured, you know what, let's do this. So I asked my mom to share her education because she was a teacher. So we studied for 10 years. And after
so all in all, you've been studying indigenous history for how long?
For 27 years. 2005, 27 years. 27 years.
When you first started, how did people take it?
Oh man, we were ostracized. We was booed. We was told that we was muddy in the waters. Still to this day, you can deal with the things like this is fraudulent information, y'all fake, and this and this and that and that.
So many people. Hey, bro, I talked to a former publisher of a major newspaper today, and I asked him if he had any indigenous roots. And what he told me was that he had a cousin who knew that history, but that he never pursued to learn any more about it.
Yeah, it's usually one.
I've heard that many, many times. One family member was paying attention.
Yeah, it's usually in most of our families it's a blood, what they call it, the fire keeper, the one that keeps the torch and continues the stories that grandmom told us. And one of the things that my mother always shares is, once you read the history, once you know the history, it's really easy to say this and be confident in saying that I'm gonna believe my grandmom over the United States history.
But this is the part, and this is really, let me thank Brenda, because Brenda has been and I've learned to ignore some of the comments in the comment section. I've really learned. But Brenda said the intermarriage tactic is still going on in Africa. We are on to something.
Intermarriage is still going here.
we are on to something here, because this is what's troubling. You see these off-brand comments. Here we're trying to have a family discussion. Don't claim to be anybody's expert. I know my great-grandma was Blackfoot Indian. Know my grandfather was Taino. And I'm in the midst of doctoral studies, spending some time further researching who I am. But this is what I know. For the past 30 years as a journalist, I've been covering these people, whatever you want to call this, because
you're covering us.
It's scary doing the show now because you can't say this, you can't say that, so melanated, that right there, these people, I've been fighting for these people, whatever you want to call them. And I haven't been checking for cards. But one of the things that I'm getting back to what the young lady said, y'all didn't stand the F up. Y'all didn't fight. I'm like,
we still here. If we didn't fight, we'd be dead.
Who taught you that?
And
who taught you that these people weren't fighting? Because in my research, second book, all over, wherever there were people with that skin, they were fighting. Venezuela, Panama, Brazil, Jamaica, Haiti. And so when people come to me and say, we want nothing, they want nothing to do with Africa, I'm like, go on with your bad self. Feel free. But I choose to do so. And when I choose to do so, you don't have no say in that. You don't have no say in what I do. Last I checked, mass incarceration affected them people right there. Black men alone make up 30 to 40% of the prisons, 40% of the federal prisons, 30% of the state prisons. When we as a people are 14, 15% of the population, we got that many millions locked up. That's a 911 in my book. The fact that we got somebody standing on the corner selling dope, coke, and Ready Rock in the Black community, that's a 911 in my community. The fact that my children are being undereducated in Baltimore City public schools, that's a problem for me. I won't touch the voting thing because actually, as much of a voting advocate as I have been, I understand people's disillusionment and apathy for the political system. I totally understand it. And I cannot shame anyone into voting because voting has gotten us, we've gained a lot, but you got this cat in DC who's stripping it away. And so when we did the show and the cat, Mike Lane, talks about he's a Trump supporter, I don't really need to hear any more from you, buddy.
Well, again,
but there's nothing else you can tell me because a couple of days later, Texas lost 5 Black congressional districts. That's what I'm paying attention to. If that ain't important to you, I get it.
Listen, man, I'll tell you this. So a few things with respects to all of that. This is what I say to the people that have been studying this for a while or think that they experts or whatever. Trust me, you was Black when I was doing this, right? So, at the end of the day, interesting enough to talk about the Georgia thing real quick with the Yazoo land scandal. To wrap it up, interesting enough on your same point, that was the creep and the Yamasee down there that went through that land scandal where the chief was the person that was acting like he was the chief was actually the governor of Georgia's first cousin, and so they put a treaty together and gave up the land. He actually got beheaded for that. And moving forward, the Creek fought against the Union, right? And so then they lose their land because the president went against the Supreme Court order that said that they were supposed to keep their land. And the president was like, nah, man, y'all fought against us. Man, get out of here, and kicked them out and moved them west. That's how they lost their land. Really short story, real quick. So so the back and forth with the Indians and who we should fight for and who we shouldn't fight for with respects to where we think we might be able to have some perceived authority or have an opportunity to have some kind of sway in things has always been the issue. And they use that against us, to pin us against
I
each
gotta
other.
put this to you. One thing mentioned on the last show that we did on Indigenous culture, and we thank everybody for participating. We welcome, this is a family discussion. One of the things stated, a guy came out, or girl, I don't know, but they said that the Yamasee were slavers. And they just threw it out there. And so, you know, I'm midstream hosting the show. Prior to that, I had read about the Yamasee, Florida, Mississippi Valley. Hadn't heard the slavery piece. And the person who put the comment up, see, now there's something you didn't know. Nobody knows everything. I never pretended to be no damn expert on the Yamasee, the Cherokee, the Blackfoot, or any of that. This is a family discussion. We're trying to facilitate a conversation.
So yeah, they were though. They were. Eventually, they started to raid other tribes, and then take the slaves back and give them up to the colonists for guns and weapons, so that they could have superiority over other people. And it was a lot of that happening up and down the East Coast.
And
I'll
the
tell you what,
Yamasee had black Yamasee. There were black Yamasee.
there was only one people Yamasee. There was only, you know. So again, so that's from
So you had
area.
melanated people enslaving melanated people.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah, in the United States.
Do we understand that? Because there are many.
I mean, how do you think that the
stories
Africans got slaved? The European wasn't allowed to come off of the coastline of Africa in any of the so-called countries at that time. They wasn't allowed in the interior. And so, you know, okay, interesting thing, right? There was a clan of men that patrolled the shorelines of Africa. Why? Because these was the men that got kicked out of their tribes and their communities. They was lone men. And so they would all get together and they created their own thing. And so these group of men were already mad at the various tribes and clans inside the interior of Africa, because they had been kicked out of their tribe for whatever reason. It could have been anything, theft, whatever the case is. I don't want to talk about that part, but they get kicked out, right? That was like their jail, right? So all of these men is all up and down the West Coast. The Europeans finds them, and they the ones that go into the interior of Africa and grab the slaves. So that's and so one of the reasons why you notice to be the case is because during that time, if you were Christian, you weren't allowed to be a slave. And so all of these communities up and down the West Coast was kind of like Christianized almost. And you would be able to know where a person came from, whether they had a Christian name or not. And so when you are looking at the history of the transatlantic slave trade from the African perspective, when you research that and you see that, okay, these peoples weren't coming from the coastline. These people were coming from the interior, and the Europeans weren't allowed to enter the interior. Then who was grabbing these slaves? It was us against us. It's always us against us at the end of the day. Now, it's a little bit different over here.
A drug addict.
Say that again?
It kind of reminds me of a drug addict.
For things. We want the thing.
The first thing a drug addict has to do is to confess to themselves that they got a problem.
That's a fact, yeah.
Because
but
otherwise,
it's
a denial. No, shopaholics,
even
sexual addicts,
depression. you know what I mean? Anxiety, all kinds of mental illness, things
And
that's
we
not
as a
even
people have
negative, just human traits.
we have endured a lot of stress just living in America, just being black in America.
Just being black in America,
What
man.
I don't get from some of these comments is how, okay,
You
so
see them.
say,
I don't actually see the comments, so you
I
should
see
you
him,
should
I see him, how,
I'm glad I don't see
okay,
them.
so having a Native American great grandma that I know of, I'm still checking on the other side. The impression I get from some people is, well, you're Native American, claim your Native Americanship. I never had to choose before whether I never had to choose. No one has ever made me. You can't make me. I'm coming from Baltimore. You can't make me do nothing. I am open to all of this information, no matter how much information I get about my indigeneity. I know what black people deal with. Black people, melanated, whatever your damn term is, your more Hebrew Israelite, assalamu alaikum, shalom, you like them, you look them, whatever you want to call them. People that look like me, that's who I've been fighting with, fighting for, on behalf of, alongside, against police, against minority business BS that we see in multiple states. That's the kind of thing I've been fighting for. And to me, learning of the land that's been stolen from black people, I want to know where the black lawyers are. I want to know where the HBCUs are. Because
So
I don't know what certain people, what impression they have of historically black colleges and university, but I know that these institutions gave a lot of us an opportunity to go to school
yeah,
and
for
get a degree.
sure. Well, see, but again, you got to recognize and you got to understand the system that we are operating under, and the and the limited space that that system allows us to operate under. And so universities, I won't name them, but so some HBCUs and other universities will propagate the dominant theory in order to keep the doors open. But if you read, if you study, and then you'll find out that, okay, this university sponsored this study that found out that 90% of the first peoples, the 90% of the people that was on that 1619 slave ship wasn't African, right? And so if the universities can come up and study those things and put them in print, then we as the population gotta find this information and then recognize it and then understand, okay, listen, we got to develop this step by step, little by
So you
little.
know what I wanted to encourage the younger people to do? Write some books.
Got to write the books. We
Some
have
books.
to, yeah, we got to write.
We need some to study the different genes and genealogy, the medical science, but we need scholars
Genetics.
in this area to write these things, not just come on a show. We need you to write the books, especially if you know information that others don't. Because if this is what came to me overnight, you know how you got these certain people who are like, well, this is secret knowledge, we're Masonic, or this is Boule. The people need
I
to
don't know
know.
nothing about none of that. I don't know nothing about none of that.
There are people who
Like, I
got
ain't never read
secret
the Bible.
societies and all of this. We struggling, and we ain't got time, for
Yeah, for sure.
secret.
I mean, again,
But this guy Craig R. I don't disagree with you, Craig R. There have been times when the HB Spike Lee told you in school days. They told
But-
you in other black novels, the black college president. Woo. I don't
but
disagree,
again,
Craig.
so, recognizing that most of my education was outside of the United States, system of learning, I can see, based off of that, learning how easy it is for us to, our general population to get lost in this
Here comes the
conversation.
disrespect. Hi, Vaughn. We've been waiting on you. You don't get it because you slow. No, you don't get it because you boule. Oh, Okay, show your picture, Vaughn, and let me put the link up, because my only thing is show yourself, speak your piece. You know, I'm not
well,
into what they
well,
call it,
while he
Facebook
jumps
gangsters. So
online,
I think Vaughn, I presume Vaughn was a girl. I don't know.
well, while they decide what they're going to do, I just would like to state that
Some people just
our
want to talk smack,
educational
much
institutions,
distracted.
yeah,
I'm
I would
sorry.
just say that our educational institutions have a curriculum geared to propagate the colonial theory and system. And so we can't think that we're going to go to any system of education or higher learning here in the United States and get an education that allows us to access pathways to autonomy or freedom or whatever you want to call it. For instance, they have a lot of indigenous law degrees that are starting to show up in higher educational institutions, particularly in the Midwest, because that's where all of the so-called recognized Indians are. However, these um, indigenous law degrees are the curriculum is established based off of the law that the United States established, not the law of indigenous peoples as a international standard that was developed by those 30 indigenous women. And so what we are dealing with now in the United States, whether you consider yourself Indian, Native American, a lot of people calling themselves indigenous, you're dealing with this thing called subjective versus objective. And for the listening audience who may not be aware of what that is, subjective and objective is the difference between opinion versus fact. So to be subjective is to say something. This is my opinion. This is how I feel. This is what I believe. To be objective is to have facts that back that statement, that are verifiable and that are outside of your emotional state or your mental state. It's something that can be viewed and seen elsewhere. And so right now, even in the United States, when people say they're indigenous, it's a very subjective thing. And and even with the lawyers and the even with the lawyers and things like that, if you have a bar or if you're going to school, any of that kind of stuff, I know personally that you are educated in the framework of the United States law, which is separate from international law. And therefore, you really, really don't understand indigenous, although you may comprehend the social perspective,
The other
meaning,
thing that gets me, Tavis, is the
mm,
spirit. Is the spirit. I understand being bitter. We all can be bitter.
yeah,
I mean, if you're melanated and in America, you got every reason to be bitter every day. But this is what I know at 60. I don't want to be bitter every day. I probably have more days behind me than in front of me. And so if we can light this fire and spread this conversation like we have some sense and respect other people's beliefs, opinions, you can believe, you can say you are who you say you are. Who am I, Tavis, to tell you who you are or who you aren't? Who am I? And
again, subject.
similarly, nobody, not near individual on planet Earth has the right to tell me who I am.
That's correct.
Period.
But again, there's a subjective approach and then there's an objective approach to
We've
that.
always been about the objectivity and giving everybody some say. There's a sister on here, Brenda. She calls us the band too. She brings in
Okay.
a mind, a perspective that those who were enslaved in the Americas were specifically the Bantus. The first time I've ever heard of it. But I don't know enough to tell her she don't know what she's talking about. I don't know that. I welcome that to the table. I welcome that to this conversation. I'm more than welcome that. Please share.
I am aware, I again, so the transatlantic slave trade was a real thing, right? Millions of Africans came to the Americas. I'm not personally disputing that in any way, shape, or form. What I'm saying is that America ain't United States. And so, when we talk about that, let's talk about what was happening here in the United States too. Let me see one thing at a time. First, we need to get them to recognize that we uncovered the lies and miseducation of us, and that we come to reclaim our true selves.
That's it. Thank you, Charles. It's not rocket science. This isn't an 800 level course at College Park or Morgan State. It's a family discussion. I tell you this is what I do not buy. Skip Gates, Henry Louis Gates said that 2 to 3% of Black people have indigenous blood. I never believed that. Never, even before I officially started studying. I'm
going to say, so now I'm going to throw on my legal hat. Y'all see I got my hat on, right? So I'm going to throw my lawyer hat on right now. So technically, he's not lying. Why? Because what you think a Native American is and what a Native American means in law is two different things. And that happens a lot.
Harvard Black man to be able to look beyond the evidence that has presented to us by others and think for your damn self.
Yeah, but he also stated, you can also find him stating that only about 400,000 to 500,000 Africans came directly to the United States. And so he'll state that too. And so the question is, well, what you doing then? Because if you stated that there's only, and he said 500, that's what the figure was when he was stating that. That's what the figure was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. They refined the figures now and it's less. But he knows that too. And so again, we have to recognize that at the end of the day, man, people gonna sell out for the money, man. You know what I mean? And so anybody.
So let's go back to the question. What percentage of Black people do you think are Native American? What percentage, pardon my incorrect language, what percentage of melanated people are indigenous, do you think? And let me ask you first.
All right. Recognizing the percentages throughout the entire colonization of this space here that we call North America, right? The majority of the so-called the majority of the melanated population can trace some relative, some ancestry that is indigenous. So I'm going to say the majority of us has the ability to trace our ancestry to someone that was native to here.
This is what younger people, I'm 60, so that's why I say younger. How old are you, Tavis? You like 25?
48.
That was a compliment, Tavis.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
You know, they called you Snoop Dogg on this show. They called you a couple of different rappers' names. But my point is, a lot of younger people may not realize that just to have that stated openly, publicly, is a conversation that wasn't happening in mass.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal for me. No way 20 years ago was this able to happen. You know, we were being ostracized. We were being blackballed. You know, we were being
shamed.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're native.
Yeah. And so what we decided to do was say, all right, well, we just do it ourselves. You know, and so that's when we started producing the educational content, because they wasn't allowing us to come into the spaces to do this. We figured, okay, we're gonna put it on YouTube. To be honest with you, I was thinking, me and my mom, I was like, well, look, 200 years from now, somebody might be researching this and they'll find some real information. You know what I mean? And so for this for the 200 years to only be 20 years is a big deal for me.
Jacob Bleda essentially said it. So, and that's what even the most Native American scholars don't realize. If you read English, you already at a disadvantage. So I'm getting ready to come with a curveball. I'm getting ready to come with a curveball. Now, I told you I'm battling damn near an hour with a friend of mine at the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
And he came with a question. Oh, he came with a question.
I'm
and
listening.
I got to pose it because we got a lot of Native Americans.
My son is a Native American.
Can any of you speak a Native American tongue?
Yes, we can. There's a lot of us that speak different indigenous languages up and down the East Coast. And there's all you got to do is look online. There's a lot of tutorials. Can I?
Do you know any? Teach me something.
I am learning how to speak our language. I am learning how to speak my language a little bit. Anuka Idem Sakor.
The tribes that sold our cousins into slavery.
Oh, I was actually speaking my language. I thought you wanted me to speak my language.
Oh, go ahead.
Anuke Idem Sakor. Moon Badifan Gabulu, Wali Shagruth, Yamasi. I am Red Tail Hawk Thunderbird, Moon Badifan Clan, Yamasi, or Mound of Knowledge Clan. Wali is our nation name. Moon Badifan, or Mound of Knowledge, is our clan name. And the Yamasi is the confederation that our tribe was a part of.
So correct me if I'm wrong. If you Yamasee, you were a slave trader. That's what the comments would suggest.
Well, so again, the Yamasee was a confederation. It wasn't a tribe that was established during the 15 and 1600s. It's something that came up in the 1800s as a part of us deciding to go to war. And after the war, some of us did do that. Yeah. My family.
This person said some really bad things about me online. I just asked you to come on camera and stop running your mouth. Show yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm from Baltimore. We like
yeah.
Tell me what you're saying. I don't.
He right about that though. Look, Indians, we speak English. That don't make us less Indian because we speak English. However, I will say that to be indigenous is to have your own language. And so if we want to be indigenous and have those rights, there's certain things that we have to redevelop and reestablish.
I understand.
Yes, they did, because they was the same people.
And I understand if somebody is hitting you, striking you with violence for 200, 300 years and telling you all of I can understand easily how you stop speaking, not you. I understand how the culture it got stripped away.
Well, again, when I was 9 years old, I was told stop speaking your language and literally stopped speaking that language that day, right? And so I've lived the life of, because I needed to integrate and be into a United States society so I could function. You know what I mean? And so I've lived that. I know, you know what I mean? And I know what that means.
And you know what gets me is when somebody comes along and, this one question over here is, where'd you get your law degree and this and that? I didn't even think that's a Black person.
University of Geneva. University of Geneva. The Leiden School, if to be specific. If you want to, you can go online and search my LinkedIn.
Did I ever ask you your academic credentials? We've been doing shows how long?
We've been doing shows for a long time. You never asked me to validate my education
because your spirit,
they don't matter.
Your spirit, your mom's spirit has always been about illuminating this, and that's what some of these people in the comments don't realize. This is not a new conversation for us.
No, we've been doing this for quite a few years. Me and you, Don.
But I love, yes, I love the energy that's come with it, because it has helped me to better understand my role as a journalist to facilitate a family discussion. And certainly I've made some mistakes falling into the gutter, kind of like a gutter ball. I don't know the last time you've been bowling, but ain't nothing worse than a gutter ball. There's nothing worse than getting sidetracked by the comments when we have information to share. The big thing for me as of late is this Racial Integrity Act and the land that was stripped from people who lived in Virginia, tens of thousands. And when you multiply tens of thousands times the value of the land, I mean billions.
How much time you got left?
I'm with you. Hey, I'm with you. You already know. I had to end the show earlier because I said I will not be late for this one.
I just wanted, okay. Let's just clean some things up real quick on this Racial Integrity Act. But let's go back to the beginning, right? And first and honest, you know what? I'd really be happy if we develop an educational system, and I could be the person. I'll be the first person to say I graduated. I got my degree from this school, and this what this school will produce for us, right? Because debate ain't about debate with me. Yeah, it is what it is, right? And so let's talk about the Racial Integrity Act, but let's talk about it from the very beginning. Right, and the very beginning of it is really coming with the burning of Jamestown and Bacon Rebellion, and that's really where you want to start this whole conversation. It's really where you want to start the United States conversation too, because before then we were something different. But Bacon's Rebellion is when what happened? It was free white slaves, free Indian peoples, and free African slaves. Because
you're breaking up, Tab. Tab, you're breaking up.
Am I back?
You broke up a bit. It went out. They zapping. You know how they do. They zap your phone. That happens.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking about Bacon's Rebellion and how that's really the beginning of race here in the United States and really around the world, because Bacon's Rebellion was the indentured. Before Bacon's Rebellion, slavery in the United States was limited to 7 years. It was indentured servitude for everybody, whether you were African, whether you were white, or whether you were Indian. Most of the time, Indian slavery was outlawed, but that's another conversation. And nonetheless, during Bacon's time, he was mad because he wanted to make money, and the government, the colonial hierarchy, the aristocrats wouldn't allow him, because that was something that only the state could do. Only the state could commerce with the Indians. This was back during Bacon, this is back in early times of Jamestown, 1640s, 50s, I'm thinking, 32 maybe. I'm seeing in my mind for some reason, 25 years, give or take, around that time. Nonetheless, he organized the poor Native Americans, the poor whites, and the now freed whites and the now freed Africans, and they all got together and they burnt Jamestown down. And then they instituted their own colony and they developed their own laws. And it was a big problem because the aristocrats didn't have charge anymore. Now, Bacon died 9 months after his revolt, right after he burnt down Jamestown. But during the time that he was still alive, he established laws. Like, he literally was developing a government. And those first laws that Bacon established during the time of his rebellion against the colony is Virginia's first law. It's the very first law of Virginia. And so when we talk about race in the United States, and you got to also look at what are the first 10 laws of Virginia, what they got to deal with. They got to deal with slavery and Indians. Nonetheless, when the aristocrats, when they finally took back over Jamestown after Bacon had passed away, they decided that they couldn't have white slaves and black slaves be free and allowed to have guns afterwards. And so what they came up with was a method that would enslave the black, but make the poor, make that white man feel comfortable because at least he ain't black. And so the very first instance of race as a method of motivation was during Bacon's, right after Bacon's rebellion, when they decided that, okay, well, first things first, we can't enslave people and then set them free and give them guns, which was the rule before Bacon's rebellion. After servitude, you got a certain amount of money, a certain parcel of land, and you got a gun. After Bacon's rebellion, you could no longer could a slave receive a gun. But not only that, slavery became a lifetime thing after Bacon's rebellion, and that only blacks were allowed, only so-called Negroes were allowed to be enslaved, and the poor whites weren't. And if you read the logs and you read the history of that time, they did that so that they could perpetuate a system so that they could keep the white people separated from the black people. Because if the white people, the Africans, and the Native Americans all get together, now the aristocrats got a problem. That's what was happening in the 1600s. From that moment on, the white and black divide, the so-called colored or Negro, whatever. I think they was using colored at that time. It wasn't Negro, but the white and the Negro thing started to separate, and you start seeing that very, very heavily depressed
I got
system
a question
against us.
I got a question for you. In the comment section over here, what can we safely all agree on? What term can we all agree on? Melanated. Nobody's bucked on melanated. Nobody's
That's a
bucked
description.
on native.
Well, so
but black is not necessarily, is not universally acceptable. But here's the thing I gotta share. This is just from a historical standpoint. Do we realize as a people that black, when we finally got to black, that was one, it was capitalized, where white is not. It evolved.
I know, right.
It took on its own meaning, like.
So you had to
and the more we
understand.
embraced it, the more it validated that we know who the hell we talking. We talking to you and me. That's what we talking about.
Let me finish. So thank you so much. Let me bring it all the way back.
Oh, you take your time.
My mom and I been talking about the time that we are living in right now. And we talk about it relative to history and the cycles that we go through as humans here. And my mom and I, we're only looking at America's cycle of stuff. But let's just talk about the last few cycles, you know. Particularly, I mentioned to my mom about the Reconstruction period and how this to me seems like a Reconstruction period. And I don't know, I may have mentioned this to you prior. Maybe some of my other listeners may have heard me say this. But you know, during Reconstruction, we had more black representatives in the Congress and in the Senate than we do now, since we ever have since Reconstruction, for that matter, with respects to the so-called colored population. And after Reconstruction, you had Jim Crow, right? And so Don lived through a time where Jim Crow was ending, because that was the civil rights movement era, right? And that's where the term black really became dominant, because it was something that our community claimed as ours, and that we called ourselves that. Society, you know, for the younger folks, definitely for people younger than me, y'all might not know that, but they never called us Black. We only called ourselves Black. For us, we was niggas, excuse my French, or Negroes, maybe colored if they felt like being nice, but that was it. We was Black wasn't even a thing that they even thought about calling us. It was literally something that our community created after the civil rights movement, or maybe during, again, just a little bit before my time, but from my historical knowledge. And it was something that we could hold on to show our resolve against a system that was so depressive against us. And so for my generation and the younger generation that is coming up and recognizing that terms matter and how we identify ourselves matter, this is knowledge that our fathers and mothers didn't have. And so we can't be blaming them, and we can't put the same moralities and ethics or even knowledge on the decision-making process from what we know now on them back then, because they didn't have that information available for them. So the best thing that our society could do from my understanding at that time was to create something that was built for us, our people, that meant something to us, that could encapsulate the struggle, the beauty, the art, the music, everything that we are. And so that's where that term came from. It was a social construct. And again, for the people that want to study law and stuff like that, they didn't know that at the time Black meant this in law. They weren't even considering law. If you got to understand, for them back then, law was jail or death, because they didn't even allow us to participate in law. That's why we have so many.
See, here's a part of it. It's not crazy, Latero. At least we're having a conversation. Where else are they having this conversation? And I'm not saying it's not being held, but I haven't heard it.
No, so with that being said, back on to the term identity.
Split up by semantics. That's my only point.
So we're going through this thing again. I call it Jim Crow 2.0. Since Clinton, Black people have had hope. If you wasn't an adult before Clinton, then we ain't have no hope in this system. We was just getting by doing what we needed to do to make sure that the next generation could hopefully have better space than we had. That was literally all we could hope for before Clinton. After Clinton, we went through this Renaissance period. And we had Obama and then everything. But now what we got now is, since Obama, we've got this thing where we are actually, our rights are being taken aback. The same thing that happened in Jim Crow from Reconstruction. That's why I'm calling it Jim Crow 2.0. And I call what we had with Obama and Clinton Reconstruction 2.0. So what we have to do is we have to recognize that that's where we are right now and understand what came with the recession of our rights. We had more rights in Reconstruction than we do right now, y'all. And those things was taken away during Jim Crow. And lynching became a right. Right? And so what we have to do is we have to reset. And if your knowledge and understand, if you have some kind of comprehension of things, then okay, look, how can we all get some kind of grounding on information that will allow us to exist outside the colonial system? That's the first conversation. And the identity, or how we identify ourselves, is the catalyst for that conversation. However, if you don't know what the definition of the term is, then to me, from you're what they call subjective with your information. You're coming at me with your opinions and your feelings, right? And so you got to know what that means. and not just what that mean to you or what that mean in the Webster's dictionary, what that mean in law. And then decide what you want to call yourself. And I'm gonna say, okay. And I'm just saying this now because I know that majority of the people that's arguing about the identifying terms don't know the definition of the terms. And if they do, come on, because I ain't got no law book next to me, but I guarantee you I know the definition.
All I want to know is when it's time to go out there and stand up for our rights, are you going to be with us? That's all I want to know.
Oh, man. And it ain't even, and again, when you're standing up for our rights.
I mean, to everybody listening, are you going to stand up for these people? Because I'm not even going to say, I'm done with the titles. These people.
It's not about the titles. It's about, so as we continue to grow the conversation, and thank you so much, because again, in 1978, that's when it was legal for natives to participate and start doing their ceremonies again. Not until 1978. So I was in the city hall not too long ago, and I played my flute, and I thought about it. When I was born, the year I was born, if I played this flute, they would have locked my behind up. Right? So we have to consider not just the anguish, the stress, the suffering that we know of that we went through as a community, but also those communities that we so quick to push away and discredit and to disassociate ourselves with, was dealing with the same stress, anguish, trauma.
Is this a major issue? I mean, are we really going to allow words to separate us? Like I said, when the popo pull the car over and it's loaded with black people, they ain't
but again
about what they call you.
But again, even with this
you know what it is when you hear that.
We just had a whole conversation about how we as a community came up with the term black ourselves. They didn't call us black. We came up with that term in the 60s and the 70s to be able to collectively unify.
Because
they didn't
before
call
that,
us
we were
that.
Negro and colored and black people.
This person right here, Ravenhawk, is not listening to what we saying. He just wants to share his opinion. Again, we called ourselves that. They didn't call us that. So
they were calling us Negro and colored.
So a lot of people are angry because of something that they're not even really truly aware of themselves.
Fully aware.
So they're angry at their ignorance. You know, and that's a reason to be angry too, because I'm ignorant of a lot of things because of them not teaching us. Also,
that's why we're here schooling each other. That's why we're schooling each other. You don't have to know everything. Nobody knows everything. I'm sure there's something I know that Ravenhawk does not know.
And I'm sure he could teach us a lot.
I'm sure he can teach me a lot.
Time for me to wrap it up now.
Okay. How can people go ahead, take a moment and please acknowledge your mom?
For sure. I gotta acknowledge my mom. Her name is Renee Red Silver Fox Sanders. She's my mother and the co-founder of Indigenous Education. She's a public and a private school teacher in the Philadelphia and Atlantic public school system for 35 plus years. And I'm very thankful for her knowledge and her skill set with respects to information. She has 2 books, Revealing America's Dark-Skinned Past, Volume 1, The Mound Builders, and Revealing America's Dark-Skinned Past, Volume 2, The Columbian Era. It's going to talk to you about all of those things that they don't speak to us about, particularly because a lot of this information was in the Spanish history and is not in the British history. So definitely, if you're interested in learning more about what was happening here, check those 2 books out. Visit us at indedu.org. Last week of our youth program, we did raise enough money to be able to close out the program, offering the children youth for the rest of the program. So we were all able to offer over 30 different youth up to what, $10,000 over this summer through our program. So very thankful for that. You know, we got a couple of them got jobs, started schools, you know, looking taking driver's tests and stuff like that. So really happy about being able
we
to
got a
offer
comment,
that.
show. You got to put your war paint back on. Ravenheart, welcome to the show. You got to unmute yourself.
Yes.
There it is. Peace.
Peace, brother.
Peace.
Peace to the people and the chat. I just have a question.
Don't talk about my mother, Ravenheart.
What's that?
I said, whatever you do, just don't talk about my mama.
Oh yeah, no worries on that, big bro. I ain't talking about nobody's mama.
Okay. Say what you need.
So my question is, so is the term Negro de Terra a fallacy? Is that not the term? The Spanish didn't call us Negros de Terra?
Well, the terra was the land. And so when they were saying that, they were saying that this land was full of Negroes. And so, yes, the Spanish called us Negro.
But Negro means black.
Well, yeah, Negro means black in Spanish. But Spanish people don't say black. They say Negro.
Right, because Negro means black. That's what when they say Negro, what they're referring to is the color black. That's what they called us. We didn't call ourselves black. We've never called ourselves black. So I'm not caught up in my emotions. I'm caught up in the historical fact that the Europeans that encountered us first called us black.
Negro.
And
Negro. They called us Negro.
Which means black.
They called
which
us
means
Negro.
black.
They called us Negro.
What's Negro mean? What's it mean?
So they called us Negro. Now, when the European came here, and when the British took over from the Spanish, they also, because they called us colored. They weren't really using the term Negro. That was a leftover term from the Spanish. With that being said, the British, they speak English. So to them, they don't care. They don't care if Naya mean black. They don't care. It is what it is to them. And as far as the European was concerned, particularly the British European from the 1600s until 1952, we was Negroes, niggas, and colored folk. And so from 1619, when Jamestown first landed, or so-called whatever, up until 1950s, around about, ain't no white person on this land called none of us black. In 1950s, or around about, during the Civil Rights era, when we as a community wanted to come up with something that would encompass all of us, no matter where we was from, we as a collective group came up with the term black. And we decided to use that as the social construct, for how we choose to identify ourselves and the things that we go through being so-called black in America. And so that was never a legal term. It was never a term that the whites codified in law to call us. And right now it's becoming a problem because we want to use their definitions to identify us and not recognize that there can be a space for group conversations where everybody is not going to be astute on the proper definitions for everything. And so as a group, as a collective, we release some things in order for us to continue the conversation and have growth, versus if you're an attorney or if you think you are, you want to have an educated intellectual conversations with respects to definitions, terminologies, legal ramifications.
Hang on, brother. Hey, whoa. Hang on, man. You don't have to be an attorney to have an educated conversation about something. What you do
I said, or
have
if you want to have one. I didn't say that you had to be one. I said if you are one, or if you're trying to have a conversation with me about that, we can. But everybody can't,
then
and everybody don't want to.
my question my question for that conversation then is what is your source? What representative of ours labeled us with the term black, or when was there this consensus among our people? Because my problem with that is obvious. Like right now, your hair is black, your skin is brown. You feel me? It's just as
So
simple as that. And
I would say to you,
hang on, let me finish let me land my plane. Let me land my plane. I'll be short. So, in terms of who put that term on us, the Spanish are Europeans, and Negro means black. So it was always within the European vernacular to call us black before anyone else in
Time out,
history. The
time
Romans,
out, big
Spanish,
bro.
they talking
Big
about
bro.
two different
Hold,
nations.
hold, hold up,
Talking about two
Tavis.
different nations.
Hold up, Tavis. Big bro. My understanding is Moors was also a term. You mentioned Spain. You mentioned the Spanish. Before the Spanish even got on a ship with Columbus, the Moors had dominated the Iberian Peninsula for 800 years. What happened to the term Moor,
right?
which was
But
later
more
passed?
doesn't mean black universally.
To some people, Moor is black. Yes, to some people, Moor is
But
black.
also,
It was taken from its indigenous, its original
The,
meaning.
here, I'm gonna throw one last point at it, and then I'm gonna get out.
Thank
So
you.
more universally means people. Negro means black. Because if I ask a Spanish person what color their tires are, they're gonna say negro, not more. And I'm on that I
so I'm gonna
land.
say,
Peace and
so
love
again, I'm gonna
to
say,
all of you brothers.
Peace and love, and come back again. Thank you for your comment.
I would like to answer his question though. And he asked me, when did we come to the collective? All you gotta do is look at history, and that's a history that you should study
Black,
for
black
yourself,
matter
because
of
it's
fact, wasn't just
our
black, it was
history.
black or more. You're right.
But yeah, it was. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the 50s. Like he said, when did we come to the consensus?
Thank you.
That's that's Black history. I mean, that's our history as a community. I shouldn't have to show you when and where and what. I mean,
Well,
that's
we
our
are here
history,
to teach.
man.
We are here to teach, Tavis, and nobody knows it all. Listen, man, we're unpacking 400 years of history that we know of, and some of it, an
500.
important part. I gotta say, an important part is the oral tradition
500.
that our parents, our grandparents shared with us. That is really what we have to hold on to more than anything that these people could ever write. Because again, we read and write English. Everything we read, most of us, has been through their system. So unless we read an Amharic and studied other languages, much of what we get is already through a funnel, a filter.
Yes.
That's where we
That's
come together and decipher that's real, that's not. That's real, that's not. But I don't want us to get caught up. I'm talking to these people, so I ain't even gonna say the name no more. These people, whatever color you want to call it.
Yeah, that's why I say, go to schools outside of the United States school system too, because you're going to get a different lens. And when you come back, it's a clearer picture, because you have been educated in a different way of thinking. And so really important. That's why I think it's important. That's why I make sure I go to schools in other nations.
You might want to acknowledge Summer Red Tree. Summer Red Tree has been saying encouraging words to you throughout this show. And
thank you very much, Summer Red Tree.
A very positive spirit, and I appreciate that, Summer Red Tree.
Thank you very much. I mean, again, I definitely don't know
everything.
everything.
One of the comments, so I want to peace. We about peace. Salam
Yeah.
alaikum, shalom, peace.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Don, for letting me do this.
That's
I definitely don't know everything, but I am it's like, yo, look, some of this stuff, it is what it is. And that stuff, that's what I'm cool with. You know what I mean? And again, to be indigenous is something that we're really not talking about yet. We're just using the social construct of what we think the term is. And so we'll keep on growing.
Thank you to everyone. Latero, DP, Jacob Bleeder. I wish you all peace. Charles Music. I thank you from Baltimore, Derek. Even Von didn't take me up on it. Obadiah Paisley, let me get that in there. These other people, not us. The OBE is Real Moors took over the indigenous in Europe, where they were planted, where there was destroyed by AI, came here stealing all our resources and signed this paperwork.
Who that GBT chat? Let me stop.
If you want to come on the show, we'd love to have you on the show. My email, I'm gonna put it in there, and you know, I'll put my phone number out there. I have no problem with it. I'm a journalist. Come on with it. You don't act right. We do like we do anybody else. We just block it. But this is really about lifting up our community. And again, I'm a journalist, but I love this indigenous conversation because it's important. And I'm certainly, every time we do the show, I go, I unpack, like what I could have done better. I'm not slipping off in the gutter no more. That ain't happening. It's not happening.
I'm glad to have you, Don, and I'm glad to feel welcome on your show to share.
And look at the work, man. See, they don't know. We've been doing these interviews, but just look at the work. I thank you and your moms. Because it was just us.
Yeah.
For a long time. It was just us.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. You answered back as a colonizer. I'm not sure who he's talking to.
That's really interesting. I'll tell you what.
Swarthy, I've heard that term used to describe black people. Swarthy.
Yeah.
Planet Wells, wherever you at, you'd have made my day. Big up Styles, Latero. Peace to everybody. I better go and do some homework. I got some classes. Obadiah Paisley, I watch y'all. Thank you, big brother. Peace and blessings to everybody. Much, he's talking to himself. Okay. But I don't get upset no more because if you think about it, man, we got a lot of stuff up against us. One, you're a dad, right? Your grandfather or dad?
I'm a father now.
I'm a grandfather of 3. And at least we can be able to have these conversations with our grandchildren, the ones our grandparents did not have with us, were not able to have, or they told us as much as they knew. But thank God for those people who did hold on to our history, our legacy of who we are, so that we have a better sense of it today. No shame. And big ups to our ancestors who fought, who stood up, who survived, just so that we can even be here on the internet in much lovelier surroundings than a lot of our ancestors. We have so much to be grateful for. Probably more to fight for, but we have a lot to be grateful for. We need each other. We need everybody.
In the late 1800s, early 1900s, here in Philadelphia, if you was a Lenape, they cut your head off and get $150 for a man, $70 for a woman and a child. And so, again, 100 years ago, we weren't even allowed to have this kind of conversation out loud. So we got to respect the spaces, the places, the conversation, and even the people that don't want us to speak out loud, because they can't stop us from being able to share this.
Okay. Good night, Tavis, and good evening, world. Big up Summer Red Tree. All is well. Call you Snoop Dogg against y'all.
Good night, y'all.
Thank you.